know we must learn to stand together, learn to live together, learn it's not forever. I know. Let's see.
Right. It is the middle. Politics and profanity. We're back for another week. They haven't banned us yet. I am your host, Ronnie Wright. Next to me, as always, the Daryl Hall to my John Oates. It is Justin. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, dude.
And on the other side of the glass, he dreams in analog, but he operates in digital. It's Ryan. What's going on, my friend?
I just got a tooth pulled.
Did you?
It was fun. Yeah.
You know, I never mind it, man. My dentist is a pretty cool dude, and he always does me right. And
I didn't feel anything.
Yeah, right. Just
nothing.
just the needle at the beginning.
Yeah, and even then, they numbed me with like a topical numbing thing.
Did you have the orange flavor or the cherry flavor?
The taste like shit.
Yeah, okay.
Flavor.
That's the third one.
Yeah.
I usually get the orange.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I got screwed.
The only health insurance I pay for is like $40 a month for dental insurance.
Okay.
That's it. It's
yeah,
the
man.
most important. Everything else, I'll deal with it.
It's one way
I
or the
got
other.
this. I got all that other stuff.
Yeah,
I'm all right.
You're like,
He's
know
just
what?
gonna smoke all the weed to get his cancer away.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. And
natural remedies.
Right. For those kids at home, we are in Florida where it is legal.
Is it?
It certainly is.
Wait. Really?
Medically.
Yeah, medical
We have
marijuana is
cancer.
legal down here. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Canada.
Is it like Jersey where it's ultra restrictive? And hard
No,
to get?
man.
Oh, you
Not
can
at
just
all.
get it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I heard you can't get smokable flour. It's only edibles, tinctures, and all that stuff.
Nope.
Oh.
My wife's got a card.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So, yeah. Actually, my dad knows somebody with a card, too. You're
Yeah,
right.
man.
Okay.
It's they
You just
can't
buy
sell
it.
it to you like loose like bud, but they put it in these ceramic canisters that are supposed to be put into a device to smoke.
Nice.
But it's like, yeah, it's ceramic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crack and
Right.
there's weed inside. So yeah, that's one of those things where they actually have that in the courts here, and the courts ruled in favor of the people because the court said that the state restricting what people can get was not what the constitutional amendment here said. So the constitutional amendment said access to medical marijuana. It didn't say access to medical marijuana as long as it is this thing, and this thing, excluding this thing. So the courts have ruled so far in favor of people down here having flour. Having it any way they want to. It was so you
So
know
if
you
you have a card and you get caught with shit, you're good.
yeah
Okay.
it's
Super weird.
you ever
So,
watch do you watch the Live PD or anything like that?
Yeah.
It happens all the time now. If you watch that show, you'll see when people are like pulled over in a state where it's where it's either recreational or and they're
okay.
always just like, do you have a card?
Yeah.
And sometimes people are like, yeah, I have a card. It's like, okay, well, I mean, even when they don't, cops
Yeah.
are like, it's weed.
Right.
Just be honest with me. What's in the car?
Yeah.
Well, I got this much. And it's like, okay,
If you're
we're
white.
taking this. That's true. But really, the people who are minorities in the live PD stuff, they get a good break too because they're on camera.
Yeah, I was going to say, because they're on TV.
I mean, so
Yeah.
that's why it's a good push to get all police departments across the country to have body cams. Every single law enforcement officer should have a body cam, and people driving in cars more and more have cameras in their cars so that they can, they have one facing forward. So in case they get into an accident, they can say, hey, this guy cut in front of me and fucking sideswipe me. You know what I mean? Or whatever. So having cameras makes things good for the most part, except for the guy down here. He was a city councilman on the West Coast of Florida who got charged with second-degree murder because he shot some guy that was stealing an axe from a store. And the guy had the axe head in his hand. So not like he was wielding it.
Right.
And the guy was trying to escape. He was trying to get out the door. And the guy was this city councilman was trying to stop him with one hand as he had his gun in the other. When the guy broke free, he shot him twice and killed him.
That's no good.
Stood over his body waiting for the
whole
cops to come.
situation is
Didn't
like-
try to aid the guy at all.
See,
And when the cop showed up, his first words were, I think he expired. Well, yeah, you stood over him and watched him bleed out after you shot the guy twice.
It's like a whole lot of stupid.
Right.
In like a really short amount of time.
And had it not been for the cameras,
Right.
back in the day, he would have got away with it. Because he was a white guy, he was a respected city councilman, and this guy was stealing something. Yeah, he was stealing something, but he wasn't threatening anybody's life. He was literally stealing the object that they said was the object he was using to wield as a weapon. But he wasn't wielding it as a weapon, as seen on camera.
Like, it's really easy to get an axe for free. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you could probably go to like one of these garage
totally
sales and get it for like $2.
Yeah, not
some guy.
even, dude.
Right.
Like, you could totally find that at a scrapyard by accident.
Right, man. Or you know what? I think I can make one from scratch because I'm so good at those games where
Right.
So,
where I can
on the
craft
topic
stuff.
of medical marijuana, by the way, and guns, they take your gun rights away for life if you get a card.
You can no longer carry concealed if you have a marijuana license.
I heard you can't buy one either.
Let's be
No,
clear. Let's be
no,
clear.
no. The NRA would never
can
have
do
any of that.
whatever you want. If you get caught, that's the
No,
problem.
But
you can't
since-
supersede a constitutional amendment with a state law.
Since I'm a former medical marijuana license owner, I don't think I can concealed carry now, even though I don't have one.
No, I don't
That's
think
what
that's
I
right.
found.
Well, you can.
Well,
you just can't.
The
around
internet could
cops.
lie.
Yeah.
Could be lying.
Yeah, I know. Not everything on the internet is true.
Yeah.
I don't want to burst your
but
bubble.
Usually.
But no, I don't believe that's correct. In the state of Florida, it's only the state law if you're going for a state concealed carry permit and you also have a state issued marijuana license, the concealed carry permit will not be approved, or if you have one already, it will be revoked. So, I mean, that's fine. But you can, it's America, man. You can own as many guns as you want. I mean, in the state of Florida, you don't need a concealed carry license to carry a gun in your car.
Oh, that's
You can
I
keep your
think it
gun in your
depends
glove
on where
box.
you're going. I was looking into this.
Now, you can keep a handgun in your glove box. I know because I do it. It has
Really?
to be in a compartment that's not, quote, easily accessible, which means the little thing you pick up that has a little latch on it between the two front seats, that's
Yeah.
not easily accessible because it has a latch on it.
Ah,
So you can keep a handgun in there. It doesn't
How
require a
many
concealed carry.
cases had to go to court for that distinction to come through in an opinion?
Every single time that something
what the
happens.
fuck?
These gun rights, gun laws and stuff are very well defined at this point in time in America.
Right, because there's been so many
There's
cases.
been so many cases.
That's crazy.
The only new things you see is the stand your ground law,
I
which
don't
is what
think
this guy
people realize
claims.
how this stuff comes into being. Like the amount of people that have to get arrested and all
Killed.
the different lawyers that have to argue the point until one of them comes to a point where a judge is finally like, all right, that's the argument that'll work.
Right, or it goes to a federal appeals court, and the federal appeals court upholds some lower court ruling, and it's like, no, you can't, the Supreme Court's not going to hear it, so they're not going to listen to it. That's it. Done.
Right.
Done, end of story. That has become case law. So, speaking of death by let's say, mishap, let's pick up last week where we left off with Jamal Khashoggi, the missing Washington Post reporter, Saudi dissident, who went missing 2 weeks ago when he went into a Saudi embassy in Turkey, and never came out again. Well, it was such a mystery. What could have happened to the man? Saudis claim that he went in and he immediately left right after he came in to get the paperwork. But his fiancée, who he was getting the paperwork for so he can finally get married, was waiting outside for him. And of course, in Turkey, you go to these cities, every city there has all these TV cameras everywhere, on every corner. So they had cameras there that watched him go in. They have cameras on every exit of the building, and they've never seen him come out again.
So, okay, he's in Turkey.
Right?
He's going to the consulate
For Saudi Arabia,
for Saudi
of which he is a
Arabia.
citizen.
This is sovereign ground in another country.
Yep.
He's going in there to get paperwork to
Yep.
get married. In his country, he's a wanted.
No, he's not wanted at all. He's just a dissident. He just speaks out against the
He's
current
like
government.
a Bill Maher over there.
Yeah, just
Okay.
just a guy who speaks out against the current government, who happens to be a permanent U.S. resident
Okay.
and a reporter for the Washington Post.
That's why we have a problem.
yeah.
Right.
They finally got the ability to investigate, and as they're going in, a cleaning crew was leaving the building.
Yeah. Yeah. So what he's talking about is that the Turkish government demanded that the Saudis let them come in to their consulate and investigate what happened to this guy. And they scrubbed the whole place down. So here's the story. The story was that they had tracked 16 Saudi, basically trained killers and interrogators that came to the embassy before he had ever gotten there, knowing that he was coming there for this paperwork. Turns out the U.S. probably knew about this beforehand and didn't give the guy any kind of a warning. And that when he went in there, he was faced with this team of interrogators / executioners who then interrogated him, tortured him, cut off his fingers while he was being interrogated, and then finally ended the interrogation by beheading him and then dismembering his body and dumping it in different locations. So 2 weeks went by, and as 2 weeks went by and the Saudis kept on saying, well, no, he left. And then it was, well, we're going to investigate what happened. And then it was, their answer now is he got into a fist fight. I'm not even shitting you. The Saudi government's official
He doesn't look
lied.
like much of a fighter.
No. He's a, overweight, middle-aged man, journalist who was going there to get paperwork to get married. And 18 men were waiting for him, and he decided to pick a fist fight.
I heard that they found him in someone's office, or they found evidence that he was in someone's office and there was someone dismembered there.
Right. So what happened was that they had a guy who's the top forensic scientist in Saudi Arabia who showed up to this interrogation. Well, why do you need a forensic expert to show up for an interrogation? Oh, did I fail to mention? He also brought a Bonesaw with him. Because, the old saying, never show up empty-handed to a Bonesaw fight.
Right.
Well, that's what this guy did. He showed up empty-handed to a Bonesaw fight.
So the Saudis had this plan to kill this dude,
right,
and they executed it in a work.
And then and then the Turkish government, because they surveil everything, knew about it.
Oh, because the Saudis were kind of hedging on the fact that nobody would find out.
Right, but the Turks don't like the Saudis.
That was a really shitty bet.
Right. So then this crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who's the crown prince who's basically running Saudi Arabia.
How old is this guy?
He's 30. Right. Privileged crown prince.
Yeah, I'm like 30 and I make terrible decisions.
Right.
I'm a mess.
So they say that he's a reformer. He's a great guy. He's reforming Saudi Arabia. You know what his reforms are? That women are finally allowed to drive cars by themselves. They no longer have to have a man present to drive a vehicle. That's great reform. It's only 2018. It's not 1718. It's 2018. So that's the big reform that this guy is hailed for. Well, you take one step forward, two steps back, huh? So let women drive by themselves, but, behead and dismember a journalist who doesn't talk nicely about you. Yeah. So he got caught, and they gave them 2 weeks.
Like, how bad does the guy talk about this dude?
Yeah, just claims exactly what he is. Like, yes, he's done these reforms, which are good for the country, but he also kills people, like even in his own royal family, that were any kind of a threat to him. In other words, that he was going to take over when his dad dies. And if any of these people there was any inkling that they might challenge him for control,
so he already had them beheaded. Accusing him of murder in a public forum.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's already been it's known. It's an open secret. Right, everybody knows.
So it's not an accusation. This is just a statement of fact.
Well, here's the other accusation. The other accusation is our clown prince, Jared Kushner, went over there last year to meet with the Saudi prince because they're in that same age range. They're in their 30s.
Yeah.
They're both princes for the most part.
Wow. That's a weird friendship.
Gave him a list of enemies.
Okay.
Gave him U.S. intel, right, on who was against him. And then promptly after that, he went and caught all these people in his own family and beheaded them because he was given the heads up by Jared Kushner.
I wonder how much that was worth.
Worth a lot because the Kushners are doing billions of dollars in business with the Saudi Arabians. The Saudi government has bought up all kinds of Trump properties since he's been in office. He sold them a whole floor of Trump Tower.
Right.
For $45 million.
So we're all not under the ruse anymore. We all understand that
he said
pretty much the upper echelons of power are just various criminal enterprises.
He said it at the beginning when this whole thing happened, and he said, first words out of his mouth, well, the guy's not even a U.S. citizen.
Oh, okay.
A journalist just got tortured and beheaded by our ally, and it's like, well, he's not even a U.S. citizen. Then he said, well, what do you want me to do? We do $100 billion in arms sales with them. Oh, okay. Plus the millions that you do business on the side, right? Right. So 2 weeks, the best they come up with, he got into a fist fight. And it's like, well, usually if somebody died by accident during a fist fight,
like,
you don't dismember the
why
body.
come up with anything? If I was Saudi Arabia, if I was that prince, and I could put myself in his position, I'd just be like, fuck off.
Just say, fuck you.
Yep, fuck off. I killed him.
Right.
What are you going to do?
That's my biggest fear about fist fights is getting dismembered.
Yeah, right. You know, you would think that would not even be on the top 20 list of things that could happen when you're in a fight. But apparently this guy decided to be Superman, fight 18 dudes, and then after he lost, they decided, well, let's not call for an ambulance. Let's just cut up the body and get rid of it. Sounds completely legit. So that's our ally, Saudi Arabia. And I can tell you right now, we don't need Saudi Arabia for a fucking thing. We don't need their oil. We don't need their gas. We produce exponentially more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia does for ourselves. We don't need them. We get almost no oil from the Middle East anymore.
Great. So we're running all those problems over something we don't even need to deal with.
$100 billion in arms sales. And because they bomb people that we don't like over there when they do things that we don't like.
Aren't they the
like
ones
Yemen.
that are blowing up?
Yemen, they blockaded Qatar.
Yeah.
Qatar's another one of our allies. But again, this was all based on they didn't want to do business with the Kushners. And so Saudi Arabia started bombing their neighbors and blockading their neighbors because, you know, they wouldn't do business with some New York Jewish real estate
you could just
moguls.
look at some of the pricing here. You can look up some of the economic data, and that's what it costs to perform a genocide in a country and basically just run amok and kill whoever you want.
Couple $100 billion. You know,
Some
people get
oil,
beheaded in the thing.
Set up some rigs, suck some of that juice out of the ground. You're good to go.
All I can say is
Let's
Saudi
run into Nightmare Land and just go evil town.
These guys never behead the right people.
Yeah.
It's always the wrong people they behead. I can give them a fucking list of the right people to behead. Not a
really
list like
wish,
Kushners.
I wish we didn't intervene so much. Where's the non-interventionalist America?
Yeah, we couldn't be more hands off than you know. This is as ridiculous as can be. When they asked the president yesterday about how plausible the story was from the Saudis, he said it was a good first step.
Nice.
He sounds like a politician when he should not sound like a politician.
Right? Like,
It's a good first step.
Like, crazy.
All right. So speaking of the president, we're going to get into this week because we're closing in on Election Day, just a couple of weeks from now. It is how Republicans cheat. So, you know, in the United States of America, we have millions more registered Democrats than there are registered Republicans. But somehow, across the United States, we have a majority of Republicans representing people in the U.S. in the House of Representatives, in the U.S. Congress, and the U.S. Senate, in the White House, and in state houses and state senates and governorships across the country. So they have majority rule at basically all levels of government. Well, how does that happen? I mean, if you look at the Congress representing in
Democrats run younger in age, and I feel like they don't give a shit.
Well, that's one line that people use to wave it away. That's how it happens.
I don't believe that. I'm just saying.
So in the U.S. Congress, the Republicans, even though they have a solid majority, represent only 44% of the population of America. Democrats represent the other 56% in a minority. How does that happen? Republicans just get lucky?
They have more land.
They're just better at campaigning?
No, they have more land, right?
No.
That's the answer.
I'm going to give you the answer. The answer is they cheat. Okay. And here's how they cheat. We're going to go through them one by one. So one of the best things that Republicans have these days for cheating is they have suppressed voters. So wherever they can find voters who would tend to vote Democrat, they have found ways to suppress these people. Easy enough, because the people who tend to vote Democrat are minorities. So you know how it goes with minorities. No one's going to stand up for them, but minorities. And then you just say, they're not even Americans anyway. Right? Or, they're just young people. They're too stupid. They don't go out and they don't vote.
Right.
So that's one of their great things. So what they do is, because they have the leadership in most of the states, at the governor's level, state house, state representatives, state senate, state attorney generals, they pass laws to combat a non-existent crime, which is voter fraud.
Right.
So in their attempts to stem this credible tide of voter fraud,
Like the stats on voter fraud are non-existent.
so I'll give you the stats on voter fraud. So in 2 Arizona State University studies, one in 2012 and one in 2016, they found 10 cases of voter fraud. 10 cases that were brought, charged, and convicted of people engaging in voter fraud. That was out of 1 billion votes cast. 10 they found.
A billion?
1 billion.
Why so many?
Question,
votes?
yeah. 'cause
Over
there's
the
not
over
even
the
a
time
billion.
period. Over the time period that they
Sheer
studied.
successive.
Right, correct. So that was over the time period that they studied. Was a
Was
billion.
that a 30-year period?
It's only from like 2002 to 2012. It was only like 10 years or 12 years. Yeah, because a couple of 100 million people vote just in presidential elections.
Right,
Right.
okay.
That's every 4 years. Do it times 3.
Yeah.
Plus all the state elections,
sense.
midterm
Okay, I'm
elections.
with you.
Right.
However, the translation for the Red Hats would be at 2 liberal colleges in a nothing part of the country, somebody made some shit.
Right. So I'm gonna answer that too. So here we go. So we had 31 cases was what the Washington Post found of credible quote impersonation, and that's from 2000 to 2014, and that's over 1 billion votes. So they found 31 cases of credible quote impersonation, where somebody claimed to be somebody they were not. The Brennan Center for Judicial Review or whatever I forget what, but you can look it up online, Brennan Center. They gave it as a percentage as 0.0003% to 0.0025% of the vote. It's possible that there is fraud. So a fraction.
That's like a shark. Those are like shark attack numbers.
Right.
Crazy fucking
They
low.
literally said that you are twice as likely to get struck by lightning
Right.
than to have committed voter fraud. Right. So I went to Breitbart so that I could get the other side of the story. So Breitbart directed me to the Heritage Foundation, which if there is a right-wing conservative think tank more conservative than the Heritage Foundation, please point me in their direction. So on the Heritage Foundation, they actually keep a voter fraud database. Now, understand, after they found their first voter fraud case, they said, liberals deny that there's any voter fraud. And look, here's one. So they found that there's been 938 convictions for voter fraud in the United States. All time.
All of time. All of time.
938 convictions. Right. I don't even want to attempt to do the math on that.
Like if there were 900 cases of voter fraud in one election, it would go unnoticed.
It would not even swing an election.
Yeah, it wouldn't even. It might swing the election of a high school in their president.
Right. So
Maybe.
So in response to this overwhelming voter fraud, they had to do something, the Republicans, to protect us all from these criminals.
That's pretty transparent right there.
Okay.
Somebody's ignoring something. Somebody looked at that and was like, all right, well, I can't phrase it this way.
So let's talk about the best ways that they have cheated to try and win. So in North Dakota, there's a Democratic Senator, Heidi Heitkamp.
It's a great state right there.
North Dakota, my sister lived there outside of Sioux Falls for a while. She loved it there. Heidi Heitkamp won her last election in 2012, a Democrat from North Dakota. She won her election by a scant 3,000 votes in 2012. She's running for re-election this year. She's a little bit behind her opponent in some of the polls, but it's been pretty close all along. The Republican government of North Dakota decided after the primaries this year, not even this year or last year, but after the primaries earlier this summer, that now all voters would need to show ID at the polls that had a physical address on their ID. Now, people would be like, well, oh, okay, I guess if I don't have to put my P.O. box down, I can put down my physical address. Well, this happens to affect a certain segment of the North Dakota population. That would be the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, the Chippewa tribe. See, people who live on reservation land don't have street addresses. They get their mail like a rural route mail sent to one place where there is no physical address on their house. In fact, in North Dakota, to get 911 responses, you would need to have 911 give you a physical address for your house. Of course, most tribal entities have their own emergency services and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so they have their own cops, so
Right.
they know the different houses anyway.
Correct.
Which is a better
But
way
if
to
you
police.
wanted it, that's the way you do it. Well, this disenfranchises about 5,000 or so Native American voters.
This is the first incident where Americans have encroached on the Native American culture.
Yes, we've never heard this happening before. So what did I say that Heidi Heitkamp won by before?
3,000.
3,000 votes? Well, she happened to have gotten almost all of the Native American vote in that election.
Oh, no.
So now they went and they passed a law, not last year, not the year after she won in 2012 or 13, but just a month ago, after the primaries. They decided to change the law to make it so that they had to have a physical address. Well, the tribal leader said, well, we can handle this. Why don't you just have 911 give all of the residents on the reservation a physical address as if they were requesting? The state said, no. They have to come in. They have to ask individually. But it's like, but you're putting the burden on us as the state. Why wouldn't you just do that? Why wouldn't you do? Well, we know why they wouldn't do that. They wanted to make it as difficult as possible for these people to vote. So now you've got these tribal leaders that don't have to ask permission from anybody. They're sitting down and they're giving every person on their voting list a physical address. They're just making shit up. And then they're going ahead and they're burning tribal IDs with this new physical address on it so that they can go vote in the election. The thing was that the very first day they were doing this, so many people requested it that the machine they were making the IDs on started melting the cards. That's how hot it got from them. So these people are fired up. But that's just one way of disenfranchising voters. Here's another way. In Georgia, there's a guy named Brian Kemp. He's the state's attorney general, and he's running for governor of the state of Georgia. He is locked dead even with the first female African-American governor nominee of a major party in the history of the United States, Stacey Abrams. So when he got 53,000 registrations, new registrations for people who wanted to vote, over 70% of them were African-American. Well, those 53,000 registration requests were put on hold for various reasons. Most of them by going to what they call the exact match system. This is a system that Mr. Kemp came up with just last year. And what it does is that when you register to vote, or if he reviews his voter rolls, and the information that you have on your voter registration does not exactly match other information that the state of Georgia has on file for you. In other words, if you have a hyphenated last name, and somewhere along the way, someone in the Georgia government didn't put the hyphen in, your voter registration is no longer valid. If somebody typed in your information at the voter registration place and put an extra space, your voter registration is no longer valid. If somebody spells your name incorrectly, your voter registration is no longer valid. So he's been using that as a way to purge the voter registrations. And in fact, they've gone even further than that. There's a group called Black Votes Matter. Black Votes Matter went to a senior center, and they were getting these seniors to go on this bus the South is Rising tour, to go out and do the first day of early voting in Georgia. Of course, most of the seniors at the senior center were minority. They were African American. So they got on this bus, and then they were immediately told to get off the bus. It was the Jefferson County administrator who called the senior center after being tipped off that a bunch of black people were going to vote. And their problem was that they felt that they didn't want to have these seniors get on the bus of a third party that the county didn't know. They felt uncomfortable with that. Because they're seniors. You know, seniors are fucking dumb. And they can't look out for themselves and make decisions. So then they decided that, all right, well, fuck, they'll get off the bus. And then the senior center said, we'll take them by van. And then the guy who runs the senior center said, well, that can't happen today because there's all this commotion and everything. And so, could it be more blatant?
Yeah.
What they're trying to do, suppressing this vote. Guy is trying everything he possibly can to keep people from voting for his opponent. And that's just in Georgia. And it's strange that the guy is in charge of the election that he's running in.
Fuck.
Right. So Governor Scott in the state of Florida, of course, he did his deal a couple years ago when he decided that he was going to stop automatically restoring rights or offering the restoration of rights to people who are convicted felons who have served their time. Now, as we spoke about once before, they get seen by a panel that he picks, made up of 3 people plus himself. They meet only twice a year to review cases, and they're over 10,000 cases behind on restoring voting rights to convicted felons. Almost every single other state in America automatically restores rights, voting rights, to convicted felons once their time has been served. We're the only state who doesn't. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be because most of convicted felons in the state of Florida are African American? African Americans tend to vote Democrat? I think it could be, especially when Governor Scott knew that at some point he'd be running for U.S. Senate after his 2 terms were over here as governor. And so,
when I have 10,000 projects to do, I only work on them 2 times a year. That's how we run such a quality project here at HBS.
And he wants to be our senator. That's the kind of work ethic he has.
Yeah.
He wants to be our U.S. senator.
And he thinks he can do something in the Senate. Like, just him. He's going to be Superman in the Senate and get shit done.
Well,
But it doesn't work that way.
It's funny because he's running the ads against Bill Nelson, our senator here for decades. That Bill Nelson's been in the Senate for decades and he's done nothing to stop the red tide and the toxic algae here. It's like, motherfucker, you've been the governor for 8 years.
Yeah.
You don't need to ask a whole bunch of 99 other people to pass a bill.
Yeah.
Right? You don't got to cooperate. You got the state house here and the state Senate in Florida is all controlled, huge majority by the GOP. His party.
So the Republicans are supposed to be about states' rights, and he's bitching about how a federal senator is not helping Florida with the red tide.
Correct. Because
that's the federal government's job.
Right. This is what that's
their job.
It's only when it suits them. Regulation only when regulation suits them. Deregulate everything else. So just like we're talking about. Look at all these laws that people. So he passed that law that now basically says that felons don't get their voting rights restored unless he says so. Literally, that's what the law says. Unless I say so, convicted felons can't vote in the state of Florida once they've served their time. Right. So, and what is this all for? The claim is that there's rampant voter fraud and that they have to do something to stop it. Well, here's something that's real. Let's look at a real statistic. Real statistic is gun violence. So let's look. In 2011, I'm taking these numbers from just because they were available and it seemed apropos to go ahead and look at some of these gun laws that were even years ago ridiculous. So in 2011, in the state of California, Total murders by firearms was 1,220. Remember how many convicted cases we had of voter fraud? 938.
Yeah.
So just in 2011, that one was all time. Just in 2011, 1,220 people were murdered by firearms in the state of California. That made up 68% of all murders in the state of California in 2011.
Whoa.
So we have 0.00003 that they're passing all these laws for. Here you have 68% of the murders in the state of California that could be easily fixed if you change the laws on guns. But they won't do that. They would never do that.
No.
They would never try and save tens of thousands of lives every year by changing the laws. But God forbid if 938 people all time have actually committed fraud. I mean, obviously, if you extrapolate, 938 convictions means that there's 9.38 billion people who have committed voter fraud. We just haven't caught them. So we also have in Kansas, they have one polling place in Kansas. Remember Dodge City, of course, made famous by guys like Wyatt Earp and the old Wild West. Dodge City is one of those historic old West towns. Well, they have about 27,000 people that vote. 27,000 people in the city, 13,000 registered voters. On an average in the state of Kansas, each polling place has 1,200 voters at their polling place. 1,200 average at a polling place in Kansas. In one of the only majority cities, Dodge City, over 70%, 60% minority, they have one polling place for 13,000 registered voters. So on average, the rest of the state has 1,200 at each polling place. Dodge City has...
How do you register to be a polling place?
13,000. Well, so here's the thing. They decided, after they've already had the primary election at this polling place in the summer, to move the polling place. Because there's construction nearby. And it's going to cause an issue. It's the local civic center that they have there. It didn't cause a problem during the primaries. But now that we've got it whittled down to which Republican is on the ballot, they want to make sure that these people have to go miles outside the city, and it's actually over a mile from the nearest bus stop, which a lot of minority people use public transportation. Well, so local places there in the city, Dodge City, said that they would be a polling place. The superintendent of schools said, we'll open as many schools as you need so that these people don't have to go outside of town and or take public transportation. We'll just open up local schools so they can vote. No. They declined that offer. Why would they decline such a generous offer? Gee, I wonder why. And then, of course, we have the number one reason or number one way that Republicans cheat in elections, which is gerrymandering. So if you look on your screen there, you can see some of the most gerrymandered districts, congressional districts in all of the United States. That one in the top middle is the 5th congressional district here in the state of Florida. It runs down the center of our state. We know that from up by Orlando, which is where those top dots are at the top, all the way down to the farmers south of Lake Okeechobee, have absolutely nothing in common with each other. Other than that red stripe happens to represent majority Republican registered voters. Look at all those squiggly lines, disjointed, disconnected dots, and those are congressional districts.
I think the top dots are Jacksonville.
I don't know if it goes up that far to Jacksonville. Because I see the barrier islands on the right there. So that's up by like Titusville.
That's the border of Florida.
State.
Up
No.
there.
Those are I believe that's a region line. I don't think that's a...
The very top might be Georgia.
No, above it. That little notch there,
Yeah.
that's the border of Florida State. That notch at the top.
Oh, where there's missing color. Okay, I'm not
Yeah.
even seeing a notch. I had to adjust my eyesight. Okay. Well, so then even worse. I mean, look how far that stretches.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, look how far that stretches to the state.
Half the state.
That's one congressional district. There's one that's also basically, where's the one? It's in the Carolinas. I don't know if it's even here. It basically goes from the top of Carolina to the bottom of North Carolina. It just goes through the whole fucking state.
I think that the bottom of that Florida is actually Orlando. I'm not sure though. I'm new here to Florida, but I've driven through the state because of the damn hurricanes.
Yep. So we have the most gerrymandered districts are in North Carolina. The most gerrymandered district is North Carolina's first, and that's the one that basically runs from the top north border of North Carolina all the way to the border with South Carolina. It runs in a squiggly line all across the entire state. Basically, when you set up a congressional district, it's supposed to be contiguous. It's supposed to be one area geographically. It's not supposed to be done by voter registration. It's supposed to be done geographically. That's the idea. So one of the best ways that Republicans found, especially after the 2010 wave of Tea Party votes. So 2010 was when all the Republicans got outraged that a black guy had actually been voted into the White House. And so they formed this thing called the Tea Party, which is basically we're just pretending that we care about taxes. What we really care about is, a black guy. And then they came out in 2010 and they won a whole bunch of congressional seats all around the country. And they won a lot of state houses. They won a lot of state governorships. Well, once they got the 2010 census information, states are required to redraw congressional districts based on the new population information. But they didn't use it for that. They used it to draw up these ridiculous lines. And really, what they're doing is that they're making sure that they have their opponents, the Democrats, in a couple of very safe districts. In other words, they pack them into one little area, and then they divvy up all the areas outside of those few places they've given to Democrats, and they make sure that they connect them all so that GOPs have a numerical advantage in their district, and that's called gerrymandering. Courts have been striking this down left and right, but unfortunately it's in all 50 states that gerrymandering has happened. And so it's very difficult to understand sometimes where in a state like Pennsylvania, where you have more registered Democrats, and actually, if you look at the elections, more Democrats actually cast ballots by leaps and bounds, by percentage points, but yet still the Democrats are a minority in the state house, the state senate, the governorship, and in the caucuses for the U.S. House and U.S. Senate. How does that happen? It happens by gerrymandering. It happens by voter ID laws that are changed. It happens by, intimidating people at the polling places by making them get off a bus as they're going to vote. It happens in all these different ways. These are all the different ways that Republicans cheat to win. And so when we talk about the biggest cheat, Donald Trump, to imagine that he would have a foreign power intervene on his behalf to convince people of things that aren't true, or to even literally go in and tamper with voter registration rolls and so on and so forth to get him to win, it's not far-fetched. It actually is right in line with everything else that the Republican Party has done to try and make sure that they win elections. When your ideas don't win elections, you have to win some way. And so that's the way they've decided that they're going to try and win. So the message here is, kids, if you haven't registered to vote, if you haven't voted yet early, if you haven't voted by mail, please don't forget November 6th to go out and vote, because we need to do something. We need to vote in overwhelming numbers. All right, man, let's do some tweets of the week.
We got this one.
So here we go. We're talking about, this is another great one. Have you seen some of the commercials for Republicans where they're talking about we're going to fight to defend keeping pre-existing conditions, illegal for healthcare organizations and health plans to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions? The Republicans are literally making campaign commercials that say we're going to fight to protect pre-existing conditions. They literally have multiple court cases where they're suing to eliminate pre-existing conditions.
It's words.
Like,
Just play with
literally,
words.
one of the guys who's running for Senate is a state attorney general who has a current case against the U.S. government to repeal that part of Obamacare covering pre-existing conditions. He has a campaign commercial where he's talking about his son, that they found out he had this very specific disease, and they're going to fight hard to keep pre-existing conditions, while he is currently suing to remove that from the ACA at the federal level.
That doesn't sound correct.
Right. Scott Walker, governor of Wisconsin, doing the same thing.
Ridiculous.
He's also suing the government. So here we go. You're no longer insured, but hey, nice hat. Of course, the great red hat that the guy's wearing. That's Trump and Hater. Thank you, at Trump and Hater. This is the angry mob that Democrats are now. So at Social Work It Out, thank you very much for this. To see the kids on the side saying, Mom, Nana, because that's the angry mob. It's a bunch of pissed off ladies, and women are running for more seats in the House and the Senate than have ever run at any time in the history of America. Probably in the history of any country. I can't imagine this many people running in any place that were women.
You would think that like women would be totally dominant in a field where most of it's based around just calling people and asking them for money.
Well, that and the fact that they usually
women are just nicer, you know.
they usually have a way of being able to function properly under immense pressure, like multitasking.
Yeah.
Like moms are the original multitaskers.
Like just in general, being a politician is an incredibly socially like driven job. And like we know just through just through theory of how we came up as humans, that men are less social because when we were hunting, we had to stay fucking quiet or scare everything away. And women were more social because they make the home more of a place that people wanted to be. So they would talk to each other while, you know, gathering or fixing shit. So, you know, just naturally women talk more, and a politician is someone who talks to everyone. So you would think...
Yeah, well, I would say that for women these days, they must be doing something right, because, God, if the GOP isn't doing everything they can to disparage and shit on women in any way possible. So, you know, when people do that, they're actually scared of you. And, you know, this guy talks about, you know, the low IQ Maxine Waters.
Like whenever
He talks
you're in
about
a
Nancy
small
Pelosi.
group of guys and one guy is like really gung-ho about like who wants to be the leader. You see this in movies a lot.
Right.
When there's a group of people and suddenly they need to figure out who leads or
Right.
something. And they always go to this one guy. And then oftentimes people are like, well, fuck him.
Well, you know, the old saying is, if you got to say that you're in charge, you're not in charge.
Right. That's it.
You know. So yeah, hopefully women are going to dominate this this cycle. I think they will. And this is Representative Eric Swallow. Representative Swallow, I know you probably won't see this, but please run for president in 2020. If someone was killed in your home while you were in it, and 15 days later you're still trying to come up with an explanation, forget it. We already know.
Right.
Right. Fist fight. That's the
The
explanation.
type of fist fight where you get dismembered.
Where you get dismembered and nobody
They
can
would
find you.
really
biggest
would have
fear.
been better off just ignoring everybody.
It's unbelievable, man. So please don't drink and drive or vote Republican. That sign should be everywhere. That's at Ivory64. That's a great sign. I like that. I don't know what neighborhood that is. I'm going to guess somewhere in California. You know, where the liberals are. In spite of Trump, if voting didn't matter, Republicans wouldn't be trying so hard to stop people from doing it. And that's as truthy as anything could be truthy, as we just spoke about at length. So Harold Pollack, at Harold Pollack, North Carolina's stated reason for shutting down Sunday voting was that counties with heavy Sunday voting were disproportionately African American, and that African Americans tended to be Democrats. They admitted this in a filed brief in an argument in a court case. The state of North Carolina argued that the reason they stopped Sunday voting is because too many Democrats, blacks on Sunday, would vote Democrat. And that's why they closed it down. Do you know why they said that? Because the Supreme Court ruled in a decision a few years back that you couldn't it couldn't be that you did something because of somebody's voter registration, voter affiliation. So in other words, they couldn't say that they shut it down because the people were Democrats, but they could say that they shut it down because people were African Americans voting on Sunday. So they couldn't make it their argument just that it was
they've
Democrats.
made light of that Supreme Court decision in a lot of stuff. Actually, it's
crazy,
very weird.
man. It's fucking crazy.
It must be tough for the lawyer to stand in the courtroom and make that argument.
And that's why I didn't understand. And then I read this thing, and there's a whole bunch of lawyers that popped on his thread, and they were like, yeah, this is the reason because of this Supreme Court case. And I'm looking at it, I'm just like, that's fucked.
Yeah,
That's completely fucked up.
it's backwards.
Like, this is the new Jim Crow. This is the new, like, poll tax.
Yeah.
This is where, like, back in the day, they used to have black people have to sit down and take an exam before they could vote, but the answers of the exam could not be known.
Right.
Like, they would ask you about somebody's personally or specifically. And it's like, well, I don't know that person. Well, then you can't answer the question, so you can't vote. I mean, that's how they used to, like, keep people from voting. Now they just, like, file a court case and hope that one day it gets in front of Judge Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. And so they can get there. So there you go.
Imagine a world
Yeah,
where
exactly.
black people can't vote on Sunday.
Yeah, we already had that world. I thought that was done. I thought we were gone
Fucking
with
Twilight
that.
Zone.
It's crazy, right? Jesus.
I did that in a different key, so
That's
no
okay.
copyright.
Oh, so this one. So I gotta know this. So this guy wrote. So he was on his way to this. It's a con for like anthropologists and stuff. So I'm in shock. He said, on my way to Phoenix with the family as a plenary speaker at the CESCon 2018. It just got denied entry to the U.S. Why? Because as an archaeologist, I did field work in Sudan in 2014. So they denied this guy entry to the U.S. to go and be a speaker. Guy's obviously probably got a doctorate, and he's obviously an intelligent guy, a
If you
professional.
come into this country, anybody out there, this is probably going to happen.
Right. And so I said, well, on the
I don't know
bright
what
side,
else
you
to
got to keep your kid.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
it wound up garnering, a bunch of likes and stuff because, yeah, that's the world we live in now. Where it's like, oh, you got denied entry? Yeah, but at least they didn't take your family away from you. Because, we do that now. That's America now. That's what we do. So if you come to my border and I think that you're trying to pull something fishy, I'll put your kid in an internment camp.
Yeah. And just so people know, we're just as shitty to our own people. Like we imprison the most of us, and we imprison a lot of innocent people. And when we know they're innocent, it takes years to get them out.
Absolutely. Oh, you got weed. Like I said before, I said to you before, weed has always been legal for me because I'm white.
Yeah.
Always been legal. I've gotten stopped by police before, and they've all said, just throw it down the sewer drain. Okay. And go on your way. Have a good night. Okay.
So I get it. It's tough getting in this country. It's also tough being in the country.
It certainly is. Like we said before, man, is this it? Is this the end of the empire? Is this how it falls?
Yeah, I think the technology really, like the advent of technology, the Romans, it took probably a couple hundred more years than what we've got.
Yeah, because they were writing shit on clay tablets.
Yeah, so they were slowed down. Everything was slowed down.
Yeah.
Now everything's a lot quicker. We're going through liters every 4 years. Like now we're machine gunning out our history. That'll wrap itself up soon, either with a big bang or a slow dying
Something, man.
depression.
Something. I'm still hoping for Canada to invade. I want Canada to do what we tried to do with Iraq, which was invade and spread democracy.
Yeah.
That's what I want Canada to do. Invade America and spread democracy. We need it.
Hooray. Legal weed.
It's
That's
almost
true.
like we would be lucky if it was a big boom, but most likely it's going to be this subtle, endless decline into just shit.
It's
where
gonna be a
nothing important
struggle.
ever happens. Yeah.
The most important thing that happens is going to be, what Melania's jacket says on the back.
Trump will be king for the next 30 years.
Right. I mean, that's really where it's
That's
at
what
these
Mar
days.
thinks. Mar really doesn't think that he'll leave.
Yeah. I hate to even think that way, but there's no possible way that anybody would, that people in America would physically stand for that.
Maybe.
This is America.
Dude, shit's getting nutty.
Right. So I mean, just based on our history, the last time someone tried to be king over us, we revolted for 8 years and fought a war.
Roosevelt went 3 terms, so it is a thing.
Right, but
Had to be a world war.
Listen,
There's
man,
a world war.
And that's not even the case anymore because
we also invented the nuclear weapon at the time.
Right. They tried to say that about Obama.
Right.
That was the scaremongering with Obama, was that if you elect him, again, he's gonna stay for another term. He's gonna start a war so he can stay for a third term. It's like, you know what? I wished he did, but only him being a fan of his. But the reality is that you can't have it doesn't work that way. And once that norm is broken, then we're done. I mean, literally, I would probably just, find out which country has the easiest way for me to gain citizenship. I mean, I have Irish descent, I have Italian descent. I think Italy's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just move to Italy. I would just get the fuck out of here. I'd be done with that. I mean, Europe's got it pretty much figured out. I mean, there's certain countries there that are starting to slide like we're starting to slide, but they're like Iron Curtain countries. They're like, what I mean? They're countries that have the taste of communism and socialism and all that kind of shit. So,
the only downside about living in Italy is no more pineapple on pizza if you go live there.
I wouldn't even eat the pizza there. My mother goes there all the time. She goes there like every other year.
It's different.
Yeah, she pizza there is shit.
Really?
You don't even eat the pizza
because we made
there.
a certain thing here. It wasn't like, we got the idea for the basics, but then we made it like a certain thing. Sort of like Chinese food.
Right.
You don't see a whole lot of good Chinese food overseas.
Right,
or even in Florida.
I'm not sure how great the Chinese food is in China. I like the Chinese food here in America.
Yeah.
Florida's basically overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
My dad always describes it as a third world country.
I used to work for a Sicilian pizzeria, a dude from Sicily, and the pizza was great.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
He must have taken some advice from Americans.
Well, yeah, man. It's a different thing over here. You go to the
Northeast, and there's a certain way to make pizza that's entirely different from most places around the world.
Yeah, that's why every other place in the country tries to sell real New York style pizza.
You got to import your water from New York to get it right.
True. Same thing with bagels. We always say that about bagels from New York. It's always the water, but it's just the way they do it. I don't know. And it's just an age-old way now of
the two
making
things that
stuff.
I will agree, I don't believe, the pizza down here is fine. The only two things that are different for me are the chocolate chip cookies at Wawa. They're wrong. Something's wrong with them. They made them wrong. And Chinese food down here is off. It's off a little.
Chinese food is acquired. You have to get used to what they serve down here. I'm with you.
There's like a Mexican spin in there. Not a Mexican.
I don't know what it
is.
is.
A Latin spin in the rice situation.
I mean, even in Arizona, the Arizona Chinese food is worlds better than what's here.
Right.
Yeah, something's going on. Like somebody.
There's like a
it wasn't brought
knockoff
here yet.
Panda Express here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't taste nearly as good as even the crappy
I was just
Chinese
there too,
food.
and it was really bad.
A Panda Express?
Yeah.
I would never do that. My wife's always just like, what's Panda Express? I'm like, that's nothing you want to try, right?
Well, there's like a knockoff one in the mall down here.
That's like going to Arby's.
And it's like,
going to Panda Express is like going to Arby's. You just don't want to. Like, why would you want to go to fucking Arby's?
You know of their existence, but you don't really want to go in there. Right. I'm aware that you exist, Arby's. I know you have the meats, but I'm not really interested. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, man, I mean, a lot of shit going on over these last couple of weeks with all this voter irregularity nonsense that justifies.
You just laid out kind of a little outline for a great documentary. Because that's really specific stuff. Those are serious strategies that are used. And it's things that, like, when you say them there, it kind of puts the picture together. Because you hear news stories about it here and there. You hear rebuttal news stories depending on which outlets you're following.
Yeah.
I've heard the voter registration from both sides for years now.
Right.
That's been the biggest thing. And, like, it really is. The gerrymandering is very obvious. Like, a couple of these things are like, why are you even interfering? Like, the system was working, but then you decided to change it, and it just so happened to coincide with you potentially losing the election. Like, that's pretty messed up. Like, at least At least you can't do that in video games. Like, you can't be losing at Smash and, like, then all of a sudden somebody changes the rules of the programming.
Right.
And, like, you just lose every time. It's like, fuck you. You can't do that.
Yeah, man. And that's what these guys are doing. And that's why it's just like, it's incredible that we have this super red majority, even though there's less red people
Yeah.
in the whole country. So how does that work out? It only works out if they cheat.
Some
like
of the
this.
conservative ideals, though, I think are very attractive to people, but there's a lot of it that isn't for a lot.
What used to be the GOP, there were a bunch of things that they had as their bedrock of their party that I had no problem with.
Right.
That GOP doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's just become the red tribe that no matter what, we have to win, no matter how many people we shit on, no matter how many people we disenfranchise. That's not America. That's not what the America that I grew up understanding and that I went to school learning
Some
about.
real dark side shit. Hate leads to fear.
No,
fear leads to
it's worse than dark side shit. It is literally what third world countries do.
Yeah.
This is what dictatorships in other countries start like. This is how, and I hate doing the Hitler comparison because it automatically gets shut down, but
There's a bunch of
Hitler,
other
Mussolini,
guys, yeah.
right, all these guys. This is how, even Julius
North
Caesar.
Koreans.
Julius Caesar became dictator for life because it was, look, all this shit is going on and
forget
only
about
I
the-
can save you from it.
Right. Forget about the recent ones. Like, up until about 200-300 years ago, literally every leader on the planet was a fucking dominating savage who just wanted to kill everything but his own people.
Right. They were just a
Essentially,
monarch.
that's the history of
Right.
humanity.
No, he had no
Like, this
responsibility.
group, we're going to fucking kill everyone unless you agree with us.
And so what we're going back to is the crazy madman whose word is the truth.
Right.
And no matter how ridiculous it is, we all have to nod our heads and say, "Yes, master." Yes, my lord.
There are points along the road of populism that may look nice, but on these roads, no matter if you choose populism, socialism, communism, democracy, republic, each one of these roads has an endpoint that gets to extreme places, and you have to make the decision which one of those extreme places are moral and which one of those extreme places are like not even acceptable on any grounds.
And that's my thing, man. So my degree is in political science, and so I always tell people the most expedient, most effective form of government is a monarchy. The only problem is if you have a king, you got to have a good one.
Right.
And who's to determine who a good one is? Well, one man's king is another man's dictator. Isn't that it? All right, my friends, that's all we have for the middle, politics and profanity this week. I appreciate you all for tuning in. On behalf of all of us here at Howard Broadcasting, for Ryan, for Justin, and myself, we will see you all next week. See ya.
I know till you straight are out of suicide.